Assalamualaikum and greetings to our lecturer, IRE James. So our team, which is from Trained Special Investigation, TSI, we are hereby today to present our Occupational Safety and Health Group project, which is our Hirarc report. Our team has conducted an occupational safety and health inspection in CRRC Railway Maintenance Depot. Our CSI team consists with 4 members, which is me, myself, SYAFIQAH binti Hakim.
Hi, I'm Nurhanisa binti Juki.
Hello,
Hi,
my name is Ahmad Alif Imran bin Ahmad Isfari.
and hi, my name is Muhammad Aziz Fidaus bin Hasnan.
Without further ado, Ms. Hanisa will begin the presentation.
Okay, here is the introduction for our project. Background of Corporation Limited, which is CRRC. CRRC is a Chinese producer of rolling stock owned and publicly traded by the state. It founded in 1936. It is also one of the largest producer of rolling stock in the world in terms of sale. In Malaysia, CRRC Kuala Lumpur Maintenance Sdn Bhd, formerly known as CSR Kuala Lumpur Maintenance Sdn Bhd. As we can see in this slide, there are several achievements that have been achieved by CRRC from 2010 to 2014. Okay, next. Okay, here, as for the location for this project, the project was located at Putra Heights, or more specific at Putra Point Commercial Centre, Persiaran Putra Indah Depot, LRT Putra Heights. As for the activities for this project, most of the maintenance activities only involve practical work in depot and workshop. No activity involve visiting the site or outside of the train repair. Okay, next. Okay. Here is the organisation chart for CRRC Malaysia. There are only 140 employees, including permanent, part-time, contract, temporary, inside extension, and in remote function employees. And here is the organisation chart for our team, which is Team Occupational Safety and Health from TSI's company that will be in duty to inspect CRRC Railway Maintenance Depot. Okay, next. Workplace activities and hazard in the workplace. The activities that carry out at the LRT Putra Heights Depot include the operation of the LRT set up at depot, like arranging the heavy spare part of train in inventory, working under the train that consists of metal dust, or with AC filter consists of dust, working with underfloor wheel, working with current character and LRT battery, and lastly working in grouping doing maintenance. As a result of this work, worker can be exposed to various types of hazards, such as slips, trips, and fall of a person or object on the same level, or from height due to unorganizing wiring plan, unguarded machinery and moving machinery, on-site transport, forklift and crane, excessive noise and vibration from machinery activities, electrical burn and electrical shock caused by wiring conductor run through our place of work at ground level. And here is some of their daily activity. First, servicing the LRT. Number 2, working under the train. And lastly, working in grouping doing maintenance. Okay, that's all for introduction. Next.
Alright, now I am going to talk about the hazard identification, risk assessment, and risk control, also known as Hirarc. Hirarc has become an essential element of risk management in the practice of planning, managing, and operating a company. As for the hazard identification, we all know that hazard is defined as anything, for example, condition, situation, practice, behavior that has potential to cause harm, including injuries, disease, death, environmental, property, and equipment damage. Also, hazard identification is a process used to identify and evaluate both existing and potential hazards on work site, which then continued with method used to control or eliminate the identified hazard. Therefore, hazard should be acknowledged. And based on our site visit, the CRRC Railway Maintenance Depot, some hazard that has been found from our inspection that could cause injuries and illness in the LRT depot. First, slip, trip, fall, unguarded machinery, excessive noise, electrical burn, poor work organization, a few worker lack of OSH training, and also exposure to gases, vapor, and dust.
Okay, next I will talk about the risk assessment. Risk assessment is the determination of probability and severity of the reliable sequence of accident or event in order to assess the extent and the hazard defined by priorities. There are few ways to assess the risk, such as qualitative, quantitative, or semi-quantitative. The method that you are using for this project is quantitative. For example, uh, look at the table 1 risk metric. Likelihood from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest for severity, 1 to 5, and 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest also. The risk can be calculated by severity times likelihood. Okay, next. This is table 2, prioritize risk section. If the risk is from 1 to 4, it is low risk. If it is from 5 to 12, it is medium risk. And if it is from 15 to 25, it is considered high risk. Okay, this is the example of risk assessment from for the hazard 1, slip and trips. The likelihood is 3, the severity is 2. So the risk is 3 times 2 equal to 6, which is the risk is medium. Okay, next. Okay, risk control. There's a few type of risk control. First, elimination, which is getting rid of a hazardous job, tool, process, machine, or substance. Second is substitution, which is sometime doing the same work in a less hazardous way is possible. The third type is isolation. If a hazard cannot be eliminated or replaced, it can sometimes be isolated, contained, or otherwise kept away from the workers. The fourth type is engineering. Job and process can be reworked to make them safe. Next, administration. Appropriate supervision to assist worker in identifying possible hazard and evaluating work procedures. And lastly, personal protection equipment. Personal protective equipment, which is PPE, and clothing is used when other control measures are not feasible and where additional. Okay, next. Okay, this is the hierarchy of control. We need to start from elimination. If we cannot eliminate, we can do the next control, which is substitution. Next is evaluation, engineering, and administration, and finally PPE. Okay, this is the example of a suggestion of the risk control. For example, the first hazard, slip and trip and fall of a person or object on the same level or from height due to the unorganized violent plan. The suggestion is for the elimination type, we can remove the slip and trip hazard at the design stage, such as eliminating changes in floor and level and installing more power outlet and avoid trailing cord. For the PPE suggestion, we can wear slip resistant footwear. Okay, next.
Okay, I will present the Hirarc form. Okay, in the Hirarc form, there is 3 important things, which is hazard identification, risk analysis, risk mitigation, control measure. So there is also a hazard type for every part. So, and at the first, the physical hazard, which is the work activity is servicing LRT set at a depot. So the hazard is slip, trip, and fall of a person or object on the same level or from height due to unorganized wiring plan. So the implication from this hazard is fall, cause injuries, and broken body part and concussion. So from the risk analysis, the likelihood is 3, severity is 2, and the risk is 6, which is a medium. And then the risk mitigation control measure. So first is elimination, which is remove slip and trip hazard at the design stage, such as eliminating change in floor levels and installing more power outlet to avoid trailing cords. For PPE, workers need to wear slip-resistant footwear. Next is mechanical hazard. The work activity is arranging the spare part of train in inventory, which is heavy. So the hazard is unguarded machinery and moving machinery on site transport, forklift, and cranes. The implication from this is can cause injuries and hindering during working. So the likelihood is 2, severity is 4. So the risk will be 6, which is medium. The risk mitigation control is elimination. So workers can isolate the machine from the worker to avoid accident. And then PPE, worker need to wear appropriate PPE when handling the machine. Next is hazard. Next hazard type is occupational dust exposure hazard. So the work activity is working under the train, consists of metal dust or with AC filter consists of dust. So the hazard is exposure to gases, vapors, dust, fumes, mineral woods, and fibers from AC of the LRT. The implication from this is the long-term exposure can cause acute or chronic respiratory disease. The likelihood is 3 and then severity is 3. So this is a medium risk. For the risk control is isolation. Isolate the workplace to the place that have proper ventilation or outdoor area. And then engineering, provide proper ventilation in the workplace. For PPE, wear appropriate PPE such as face protection and mask. And then the next hazard type is health hazard, which is working with the underfloor wheel lathe. So the hazard is excessive noise and the vibration from the machinery activities. The implication from this hazard is repeated exposure can cause hearing deteriorate and hearing loss. Vibration from machinery can reduce the grip strength. So the likelihood for this hazard is 4 and the severity is 1. So the risk is 4, which is low. And then the risk control is isolation. Isolate the machine to reduce the noise hazard, and PPE, wear appropriate PPE such as earplug when doing activity near the machine. Next is energy hazard, which is electrical. So the work activity is working with the current collector and LRT battery, working near the stinger system for train. So the hazard is electrical burns and electrical shock caused by wiring conductors run through our places of work at ground level. The implication from this hazard can cause electric shock, which would lead from the slight burn to death. The likelihood for this hazard is 2 and the severity is 4. So the risk is medium. So the risk mitigation control by isolation, which is remove the exposed part of the electrical appliance, and PPE. Worker need to wear insulating glove when doing work with electrical. Then safety hazard. So the safety hazard in the working activity is working at the LRT set at depot. The hazard is few workers are in lack of OSH training, which is not wearing PPE. The implication from this hazard can lead to injuries, broken body part, and even death. So the likelihood for this risk is 4 and the severity is 4. So it's a medium risk. So this risk mitigation control will be on the administration. Workers required to use standardized safety practice. And then PPE, wear appropriate PPE when doing the work. Lastly is working organization hazard. So the activity is working in a grouping doing maintenance. The hazard is poor work organization and team performance, which can lead to inefficiency work and delay in the completing work. The likelihood for this hazard to happen is 4, and the severity from the hazard is 2. So this risk analysis is 8, which is medium. So this risk mitigation control measure falls under the administration, which is initial training on safe work procedure and refresher training should be offered. Next. Next is conclusion and discussion. First, working in railway depot involve many hazards and need to be identified and make risk assessment from the involved hazard and prevention method to avoid from accident to happen. So the Hirarc process involve 4 steps, which is classify work activities, identify hazard, conduct risk assessment by calculating or estimating and decide if the risk tolerable and apply control measure if necessary. So from our research, the highest risk in general is exposure to the gases, vapor, dust, fume, wounds, and fiber from the AC and the underframe of LRT, which leads to 9 risks from the assessment. This is because the exposure of the workers to the metal dust from LRT operation, which can cause chronic respiratory from long exposure when not PPE. Okay, next is so from the risk assessment, risk mitigation control method will make for the respective hazard and workers to required to follow the method that has been laid out by the inspection officer. This is to reduce the risk of accident in the depot and company can avoid from the various accident. As conclusion, the Hirarc is important and need to be done at every working site and every workers need to follow the guideline provided by the OSH inspection team. That's all for me. Thank you.